Welcome to this explainer. Let's just jump right into this because I want you to picture a classroom. It's a setting that's highly familiar to every single one of us. Somewhere in that room, there's a child who just cannot sit still. They're tapping their feet, shifting in their chair constantly. Now, 20 years ago, you and I probably would have simply called this child energetic, maybe a bit mischievous, right? Over on the other side of the room, another child completely avoids eye contact. Back in the day, that was almost always just chalked up to a kid being naturally shy or reserved. And of course, we all know the highly talkative student, the one who has a random story for absolutely everything. Once upon a time, they were viewed as stubborn or perhaps just overly imaginative. Or even think about the kid who treats their living room like a total obstacle course. Yet today, something has drastically shifted. Many of these exact same children are leaving the classroom or the doctor's office with a medical referral form instead of detention. They're leaving with a diagnosis.
Which really forces us to confront a profound and, frankly, kind of uncomfortable question. Have children themselves actually changed, or has our definition of childhood changed? Are kids today literally getting sicker, or are we simply drawing the line between normal and abnormal in a completely different place?
Just to wrap your head around the sheer scale of this, look at the UK's National Health Service. Back in April of 2019, the waiting list for ADHD assessments was around 21,000. Today, that number has surged to a staggering 270,000. And guys, this is not an isolated event. All across the globe, we are witnessing an absolute explosion in neurodevelopmental diagnoses. I mean, 1 in 5 UK children are now considered neurodivergent. In the US, ADHD prevalence is sitting over 11%. Up in Iceland, more than 15% of all adolescent boys are actively medicated with stimulants. Parents and educators are desperately searching for answers. So what on earth is actually going on here? Well, our first major clue actually lies in our DNA. A massive, groundbreaking study out of the University of Copenhagen recently analyzed the polygenic risk scores of over 37,000 individuals. And the results? Totally stunning. It turns out, individuals diagnosed in recent years actually carry a significantly lower genetic risk for these conditions than those diagnosed back in the 1990s. We're talking about a 15% drop in genetic risk for ADHD and up to a 25% drop for autism. Now, human genetics do not just spontaneously change in 20 years. Evolution simply doesn't work that fast. So this data points us to a singular, undeniable conclusion. Today's diagnoses encompass a much broader group of individuals, featuring way milder symptoms. The actual threshold for what constitutes a disorder has dramatically shifted. You can see exactly how this happened just by opening up the psychiatric guidelines themselves. If you compare the old DSM-4 to the current DSM-5, the diagnostic criteria have visibly softened. Previously, a kid needed to meet 12 out of 18 incredibly strict criteria before they even turned 7. Now, you only need 6, and those symptoms can appear all the way up to age 12. We've essentially cast a massively wider net. And to be completely fair, this wider net has caught a lot of people who genuinely, truly needed help. We are finally identifying girls who often present as quietly inattentive rather than hyperactive, and we're reaching historically overlooked groups. But it also reflects a darker institutional reality. In a lot of modern educational systems, getting a medical label is increasingly the only possible way a struggling child can unlock specialized resources or school accommodations. Medical journals actually have a specific term for this. They call it over-medicalization. It's this process where totally normal, expected developmental struggles get redefined as medical illnesses. Experts are warning that we are getting trapped in a dangerous loop. A child struggles with a highly rigid classroom structure, and instead of adjusting that environment, they're immediately sent off to a physician to be, fixed with a diagnosis. But the mystery deepens even further when we examine how these conditions actually look in the real world. Because when you look closely, you start spotting these fascinating contradictions. Paradoxes that totally challenge our baseline assumptions about how a neurological disorder is even supposed to behave. For example, to get an ADHD diagnosis, a child only needs to display symptoms in 2 contexts, which is usually home and school. Yet that same child might be completely unable to focus on a math worksheet in a loud classroom, but then they'll go home and spend 4 hyper-focused hours building a ridiculously complex Lego set. If the brain is truly completely unable to pay attention, how does it suddenly focus for hours on end when it's doing something it actually enjoys? And then there is the relative age effect.
This is wild. When you compare kids in the exact same grade, the youngest children, the ones born just days before the school cutoff date, are significantly more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD. Why? Simply because they are naturally more immature than their classmates who are almost a full year older. We're literally taking natural, age-appropriate immaturity and labeling it as a medical deficit.
To complicate things even more, there are countless conditions that perfectly mimic ADHD. A chronically sleep-deprived kid? They look hyperactive. A child with undiagnosed dyslexia is going to completely zone out in class. What about the little girl who just needed glasses? Or the boy experiencing absent seizures? All of these things blur the lines, making it incredibly difficult to isolate a true neurodevelopmental disorder from simple environmental stress.
And we absolutely cannot ignore the greatest environmental stressor of all, the modern world itself. Think about it. We are asking so much more of children at younger ages than ever before in human history. We start formal schooling earlier, we've drastically cut down on free, unstructured play, and we demand absolute physical stillness at an age that is literally biologically wired for motion. Which leads us to a highly uncomfortable realization. If a classroom explicitly rewards sitting perfectly still for hours on end, while human childhood naturally involves endless movement, exploration, and, let's face it, noise, we have to ask ourselves, are we adapting our schools to fit the natural development of children, or are we medically adapting children to fit the rigid demands of our schools? Now, let's be absolutely clear here. Neurodivergence is real. The genetics show it, the clinical impairments show it. Every single child who genuinely needs medical, psychological, and emotional support absolutely deserves it, without question and completely without stigma.
Similarly, any child struggling with the overwhelming, heavy pressures of the modern education system deserves our deep empathy and understanding. I mean, they are doing the very best they can in environments that can be incredibly taxing on a growing brain.
But as the data from geneticists, sociologists, and medical journals clearly shows us, those two things are not always the exact same thing. Validating a child's developmental struggle is not necessarily the same thing as identifying a lifelong medical disorder. Thanks for joining us for this explainer. Because as we step back and look at the skyrocketing numbers, the changing diagnostic manuals, and the massive expectations we place on our youth, perhaps the biggest question we're left to wrestle with isn't actually whether we're diagnosing too many children. It's whether, in our endless pursuit of order and academic perfection, we've simply forgotten what a normal, messy, vibrant childhood looks like in the first place.